Hi, this is going to be a quick tutorial video talking about Looker and how to schedule Looker reports, or more precisely how to update your data cache on a schedule, so this way whenever somebody opens up a report or a tile, that your data is current and that users don't have to clear cache or update cache or run a very lengthy SQL that might take time for a report to pop up. So let's first talk about why you would want to do this. The obvious reason is that when users pull up a tile or a report, they want to see their data right away. They don't want to wait for an SQL statement to run. Maybe your SQL statement is very complex and takes time to run. By updating your cache on a schedule, when users open up the report will pop up really fast. Maybe you don't want your reports to update all day long. You just want them to update off hours, or maybe at a specific frequency, like only once a week or once a month. Maybe you have multiple users and they're trying to update a report at the same time, and that's driving contention on your system, which you definitely don't want to do. So by using this method, whenever a tile or report pops up, it is always going to pull data from the cache and not rerun the SQL statement that is in your view file. So when I first started looking for this and Google how to do this, it really wasn't obvious, and I found a whole bunch of different workarounds, but then one day I stumbled on how to actually do it. And it was really a matter of the wording that I used in my search. It's not about scheduling something, it's about updating your cache. And once you see this, you'll see how easy it is to set up and use, and you want to use this for all of your reports. So when you go to look for this in documentation, you're going to want to do a Google search for Looker caching and data groups. And then that's going to pull up the web page that talks about all of these different parameters. And what you're going to do is you want to modify ML parameters in your model file, and you're going to use these 4 different parameters to control this. You've got your SQL trigger, your interval trigger, and your max cache age, and your persist with statement. Your SQL trigger is literally an SQL statement that is going to define when the cache update is triggered. The interval trigger is how often you want that SQL statement to run. Your max cache age is how long you want your report data to remain in cache before it updates. And persists with is what you're going to use in your explore statement to define how often that explore statement gets updated. So this should look familiar to you, right? This is a model file, and it's a very generic one that I create as an example. Up top you got your connection, down here you have your include statement, and down here you have your explore statements for the different views that you might be creating. But all we're going to do is we're going to insert this data group, and I'm going to talk more about that in a few moments. You're going to define your data group, and then in each explore you're going to define a persist with statement that points back to the data group, and that is going to control your cache. So just something to note, that you can have multiple data groups that have different definitions, and that could be applied to your different explores. You just have a different data group with a different name, and that would point to a different persist statement in each of your explores. Now I'm just going to use my text editor, and I'm going to give you a very, very simple example. So this is an example of what you would have in a model file, right? You've got your connection, you've got your include statement, and then you have your explore statement. And what we're going to do is we're going to add this data group statement, and we're going to give it a name like cache update daily. We're going to give it an optional description, update the report cache daily after midnight, and then we're going to define our SQL trigger. And this is going to be a very basic SQL statement, select current date, which just returns the year, month, and day. We're going to run this SQL statement every hour, and that's what we've defined here in interval trigger. And we're going to set our max cache age to 24 hours. So this way data stays in cache for 24 hours and doesn't change until we run this update. And then down in the explore statement, we're going to add this persist with statement parameter, which is going to have cache update daily, which is pointing back to this data group. So what's going to happen is every hour this select statement is going to run, and every hour we're going to get a date back. And what happens is after midnight, when current date changes, then the data cache is going to update. It's going to run the SQL statement that's in your view file. And then this will continue every day. When the date changes, it is going to run that cache update. So now this is a very simple setup, right? Select current date is going to run very quickly and return a value, but it doesn't really give you a lot of control. Whenever this runs at some point after midnight, it's going to change, and you don't really have a lot of control if this runs at 1 a.m. or 5 a.m. or once a week or once a month. And that's what we want to do in our next example. We want to control this further to say not only do we want it to update when this value changes, but we want to add more controls so that it updates on a very specific frequency that we define. So now in this next example, we're going to get a little creative and we're going to add some controls to this select statement, because I only want to update the report cache between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. So I've updated my description and I've updated the SQL statement, and now I've put a case statement here, and I'm going to say when the time is between 3 and 5 a.m., then we're going to update, else outside those hours, do not update. So I'm doing that by extracting the hour from the current time. I'm going to set it as an integer, and in my case statement I'm going to say if it's between 3 and 5, then return update, else do not update. And then this is going to force the update between 3 and 5 a.m. In this next example, I'm going to get creative with my select statement again, and I'm going to say that I only want this report to update once a week. So I'm going to set the cache to update weekly on Sundays between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. So now I'm going to use a concat statement, and I'm getting creative again, and I'm going to concatenate the day of the week to the hour, and I'm going to say if it's between 11 and 13, which is going to be Sunday is the first day of the week at 1 a.m. and Sunday at 3 a.m., then do an update, else outside of that, do not do an update. Now, in the max cache age here, I've also increased this to 168 hours because I don't want the cache to disappear during that time. I want whenever users to pull up a report that it's going to pull from cache, and that cache is going to last for 168 hours. In the last example I'm going to go through, we're going to run this report to update the cache on the third day of the month between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. And now again I'm going to use my concat statement, and I'm going to get the day from the current date, and I'm going to get the hour from the current time, and I'm going to say if it's between 31 and 33, which would be the third day of the month at 1 a.m. and the third day of the month at 3 a.m., then do an update, else do not do an update. And I'm also going to increase my cache so that my cache is there for a month. And now if users pull up a report, then that's going to pull it right from cache and not have to wait for the SQL statement to run. So now that you know how to set this up and control it, you can see that the ways that you can control this are limited only by the creativity of your trigger SQL and setting the max cache age, right? Those are the keys. And it doesn't have to be that your SQL statement is a time value or a day value or an hour value. It can be the value from another table. It can be there's X amount of rows in another table now, so make the update. Or there's a new date in this other table, so go ahead and do that. There's all kinds of different ways that you can create an SQL statement that you might want to get a value from to trigger your data cache update. So to help you along, you can use Google to search for SQL trigger examples. You can use Google AI to say, give me an SQL statement that returns whatever it is that you want your schedule to be. And Google is going to be your friend, and they're going to give you an SQL statement that you can plug into your SQL trigger as an example to update the cache on your reports. So to wrap things up, I'm not a social media influencer. I don't make content for a living, well, at least not yet. I was just excited when I found this because I had been looking for it for quite a while. My local Google expert didn't know about this and told me I had to write alerts on my reports. Searching the internet didn't yield this. So when I found this and proved that it worked, I just wanted to share it with the community and help everybody out. So if you found this helpful, great. Feel free to leave me a comment, and I hope you have a great day.